We're learning languages so we can connect with people through conversation. We want to have meaningful connections. We want to have flowing conversations. Think about how you speak with your best friend. You want that sort of fluency, that sort of flow with the people from this other languages you are interested in. You want to get to know more. You want a deeper connection. How do we do that? Start with the basics. And you want to clear the noise. When you first enter into the language, there's a new set of sounds, a whole new acoustic system. You literally don't hear it. We talked about movement in your mouth. You're not able to create these sounds at first. You have to train that and tune into the signal the same way if you can't understand what's going on a radio station because you're not properly adjusted to the right signal. The way you do that is you break down the signal into its component pieces. You filter out one element at a time, focus your attention on it and repeat it over and over again until it imprints into your subconscious mind, until it imprints into your motor memory. And once you've achieved that, then the noise and static starts to fade away and you're tuned in more. The next step, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to find the flow. We want to have a flowing conversation. Once again, think about the person you're most comfortable with and then compare that to when you're trying to speak this foreign language and you're super nervous, you can't get the words out, you have no idea what's going on. I feel like I'm drowning, right? So that's what happens when water turns against us, right? We have this stream of sound coming at us at high speed. And if we don't know how to manage it, we can kind of get lost in that flow and drown in it. Or when it's time for us to speak, we feel blocked, right? It's as if there's, trash in the river or a dam in the river. So you want things to flow out of us. We have things you want to express, emotions, thoughts, feelings we want to put out there and express our true identity to people. So there's a famous interview with Bruce Lee. We'll see what he says.
This is what it is, okay? I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup. It becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
So what's Bruce Lee talking about here? How do we be like water? We don't want to drown in the water. We don't want the water to get stuck. We want to go with the flow of the stream. There already exists the flow of Spanish. You're kind of shaping yourself into that container, that teapot that Bruce Lee was speaking about. And then you're entering into the flow. Imagine like a kayaker. You come in and then you've gone in that river over and over again. You know all the twists and the turns. You know all the rocks, all that kind of stuff. So when you go on, you enter into flow and you can navigate and go around all those different things, right? So flow state, that what Bruce Lee's talking about, when you're like water, you're entering flow state. The best way you can think about it is with this acronym, STER, S-T-E-R. It's that experience, that state of consciousness you enter into where you lose your sense of self, you lose a sense of time, things seem effortless, it just kind of flows and goes. And then the experience is very rich. You have, you notice all these details. It's a higher intensity kind of experience. So what are some examples? Well, one is a flowing conversation. Think about the time you met that person and then time goes by. You can just speak. You feel like you're understood. You feel like you understand that person. You can just talk forever, right? That's a flowing conversation. Or maybe in a sport, you just become one with the elements. You become one in the game. So this is the learning loop. The 3 P's of learning are perception, practice, and performance. So I mentioned in jiu-jitsu, for example, I perceive the better jiu-jitsu person doing a movement, then I practice that movement myself. I play around with it, try to get different angles, see how it feels. Then when I come into the match, I perform it. And then once I successfully perform it, I've integrated it into myself. And then what happens is when you integrate, you've now expanded. You've become more a better jiu-jitsu person, a better whatever the art form is. Which means when you go back and you perceive the experience again, someone doing the thing, you end up perceiving more details. You have that much more expert of an eye, expert of a perception mechanism. So you keep repeating that loop. I want to talk about why it's important from a learning point of view. Once again, you don't have time to capture meaning when you're drowning in the flow of sounds. Right? Go in with the flow of the language. What you become is a mimic. What that means is that when someone speaks to me in the language, even though I don't know what any of it means yet, I'm able to extract out a sentence, a phrase, a couple of syllables. So someone says something, and then I can perceive it, and then I can mimic it. So I can reproduce those exact same sounds that that native speaker said. I still don't know what it means, but I can ask, what does this mean? Or maybe I don't even need to ask. I can just kind of figure it out from the context. And then if I do that enough times, it sticks in my mind. And then the next time I find myself in that context personally, and I want to perform, it will just kind of come out of me. So that experience of speaking and saying things you don't even know you know, that's what's going on here. But it only happens when you've cleared the path, when you've cleared the channel and you allow things to flow. And once again, what's our main goal here? Connect with people through conversation. The way you do that is you have to learn what things mean and how to make those sounds, but first you need to tune into that. So that's what this flow is about. Now, so how do we do that then? Now that we've kind of established our goal here, enter into flow state, feel the flow of the language and have it communicate freely. Well, the signal is the flow. And we've already filtered out all the different details and elements of that flow. So imagine then you've already done this process. You've retrained your brain to listen for syllables rather than words. That's the big one. Then you've trained your ear to hear stress patterns as denoted by length, loudness, and pitch. You've trained your ear to follow and trace the melodic cadence of phrases. Train all the consonants, all the vowels of this language. So now you can pronounce them, you can hear them and distinguish them from each other. No one speaks just in melody or speaks just in stress patterns. We have to combine all of it, and we need to do it at full speed. You can learn vocabulary with all these things over here. You can learn grammar with all these things over here. What you're not getting is the flow. And it's not the same as the pronunciation. You can learn how to pronounce words individually pretty well, but the flow of the conversation, that's something else. The most effective way to train your listening comprehension is to transcribe the syllables into the elemental sounds, into the phonemes, and into the pitch patterns, all the other kind of stuff. So I'm going to show you right here.
What I did today is transcribe this into what's called the IPA, International Phonetic Alphabet. And what this is imagine I just transcribed the dance moves from my tongue. Every single one of these symbols corresponds to a specific movement that I need to make with my mouth. And it took me a lot of time to listen. And then what I'm doing is I'm trying to mimic, right? So I take a phrase and I try and mimic until I feel like I got it right. So here's a good one. Kolana magishim, 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 malgishim. So what I'm doing is as I'm going through it, I'm like, where am I tripping up? Where's my tongue getting tied? This is where my tongue is tied. And if I need to, I can zoom in on that moment and just focus on that. Malgishim, 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 kolana magishim. Kolana magishim, kolana magishim, kolana magishim. See, I'm doing it. I don't know what this means. I'm just trying to mimic the movements of the mouth, mimic the sounds.
The interesting thing is, now that I actually know Hebrew a bit more, like 40% of what I did here was incorrect because once again, my auditory cortex wasn't adapted to Hebrew yet. But it doesn't matter. It's not about getting it correct. It's about doing it. Because when you're sitting here listening to, an Israeli person say a word 100 times, and you're listening, does her voice go up or does it go down? Is she making this sound? Is her tongue here? What it is your personal most meaningful goal is, like who it is you're trying to connect with. And when this happens and your connection with the person is blocked, why does that frustrate you? So understand what that is for yourself first. Then we break down the signal, and the build up for the signal is first you practice rhythm. That's chopping things into syllables and then getting the stress pattern of the syllables. Then you have melody, seeing how the syllables move up and down in pitch and kind of flow into that cadence there. And you can do that just by humming, just by being like, Then we go into articulation. That's all about movement because this all begins with movement. Anyways, you learn the elemental sound, how to pronounce it in isolation. Then you try to transcribe things. You find speech, you slow it down. You can use a software like Audacity. Once again, you're kind of just going into this jungle and discovering things bit by bit. And you're reminding yourself that it's not about getting it right. The mere act of filtering and focusing is giving your subconscious mind what it needs to train. And if you do that over and over again, one syllable at a time for a few hundred syllables, it doesn't take that long actually. And boom, all of a sudden things start to pop into your ears more. You start to not understand what things mean, but you start to feel how things sound. You're kind of like, oh, he's saying this, or this is going like this. And you start to kind of flow into that river a bit more. You know, you've kind of reached your flow stage when what used to take you like an hour to transcribe, you can now transcribe in a matter of minutes because you just kind of know the game. You're like, oh, I recognize this. So what happens is when you start doing this transcription, you start to pick up on the patterns. And you'd be like, oh, okay. And it's not a conscious thing. You're just doing it, and then your brain starts to be like, oh, only these combinations are possible. So our expectation frame has now been shaped to capture all the possible phonotactics of that language. So phonotactics just means like, this is all that exists. There's only so many melodic patterns. There's only so many stress patterns. There's only so many elemental sounds and only so many ways that they combine. You just keep doing it, and then eventually you fall into the flow of it, and your unconscious brain just knows. Everyone has something, right? And that's that deep immersion experience. Pay attention to whatever your flow state activity is, and then think and reflect on how it was you arrived at the level of mastery you have right now. And you're going to be walking that exact same path here.